Anchors up, sails at full. Welcome to the Sloopcast. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing all right, Jared. Doing all right. How are you doing today?
You know what? I'm not going to complain. Kyle, we are recording this earlier in the day than we normally do, so I will not be cracking a beer. I instead it's just a flavored water. That's it. It's just a flavored water. We don't typically drink at 2:00, not in this household. But, you know, we had to keep the new yet thriving tradition of me cracking something open at the top of the podcast.
All right. It is another round of our mock class here. We're going to talk again about the 2025 mock class here. What's recent trends?
Part 3.
Part 3. It is, isn't it?
Hey, Kyle, can you do me a favor? Because I totally forgot to do it.
Maybe.
I believe in the show notes. The last time we did a building blocks episode, we had the mock in that class. Can you pull that up so we can compare and contrast what changed?
Sure. Give me a moment here to pull this up here. So this was about a month ago here. Yeah, I got it up.
Cool.
Nope. That is not it.
February 18s somewhere, I'm pretty sure. Not a ton. I will say not a ton has changed, although there have been some very important changes. And I think maybe before we get started, we should note in the 2026 class, and we're talking 2026 here for just the briefest of moments. Ohio State's primary target at the quarterback position has committed to Georgia. I will say I am not super worried about that yet at this point. It's still very early in the process. Ohio State has great relationships with other quarterbacks in that class. And quite frankly, I'm not ready to give up on anyone this early in the process, especially for a 2026 kid. That being said, Ohio State's loaded at the quarterback position. If you look at the two absolute studs that they brought in 2024, and as I transition into the 2025 class, the absolute stud and newly crowned 5-star that they have in this class. Switch screens. I am, of course, talking about Tavian St. Clair, Bellefontaine product, right here in Ohio. And like I said, recently got his 5th star. He's already committed. He's already in the class. I have absolutely zero concern that he won't be in this class when all is said and done. You know, a year from now, he'll be in spring camp. I have no hesitations about that.
Yep, I agree. Nothing's changed there. And yeah, nothing's changed. I don't think we need to spend any more on the quarterback position here, though.
For the YouTube folks watching, I do have a visual on screen. We're going to be laying out the mock class just to help people keep track of this a little bit easier. So if you're listening on the podcast version and maybe all the names get to be a little too much for you, we do have a visual aid on the podcast. That being said, as well, I will also be laying out not just who I am putting in the mock, but also some additional targets to keep an eye on, what I call in our Discord server, the short list. And at the quarterback position, I have none. We have no one in the short list at the quarterback position. We're all in on St. Clair.
Yes. Now the running back's a little bit different story here. Definitely, there's about 4 or 5 names out here that been thrown around here. I
really have it narrowed down to 4 personally.
Yeah, last time that we talked, we narrowed it down to 2. In-state Bo Jackson and a Florida native, Brian Lewis.
Yes. I have made a change here. I still have Bo Jackson in the class. I think it's a matter of time before he ends up committing to Ohio State. I'm gonna give you 4 running back names here. This is the guy who you can whip out a pen and just go ahead and write him in. I feel very good that eventually Ohio State, Bo Jackson are going to come together and he's going to be in the class. And again, he'll be in spring this time next year. Maybe. I don't know if he's going to graduate early or not, but you know what I'm saying. Now I have made a change, however, with the second running back in the mock. And admittedly, this might be a bit of me getting a little hesitant with a late season change in the running back coaching room. Might be a little bit, you might lose a little bit of traction recruiting the national kids. So, I'm keeping Byron Lewis, Ohio State running back coach Ryan Day. Exactly. And by the way, once we see who Ohio State brings in to be the running back coach, I might totally change my mind on this. But as of right now, I'm going to play this a bit conservative. I'm going to take Byron Lewis out of the mock. He is still going to remain in the short list, however. And I'm going to add another Ohio in-state product, Marquise Davis, to the mock instead. I think if Ohio State wanted to, they could just close up their running back class right now, go get Bo Jackson, go get Marquise Davis, and call it a season on recruiting running backs. I think they could do that. And personally, I think they should do that. No disrespect to Byron Lewis, who, as I said, is another guy who could very well be in this mock, or Jordan Davis, who's the other guy who I have in the short list just outside the mock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Bo Jackson, as you mentioned, Jared. Bo Jackson, kind of just pencil him in there. Yeah, and I squeeze in Marquise Davis here, another in-state person. I think not quite as obvious as Bo Jackson. You kind of pencil him in, but I think Ohio State could easily grab him. But I still like Brian Lewis as a third. I think Ohio State may go with 3 running backs here, but those are the 3 that I have right now: is Jackson, Davis, and Lewis.
It's interesting. I don't know if I don't know if it's in the plan to take 3 running backs right now, personally, but I could be wrong. Things change, obviously. But I think there was a point in time in which they were looking at Jackson as like an athlete, but I really don't think he's a running back. At the end of the day, I think he's a running back. So I'm not quite as leaning towards that athlete designation with him as I would have been even just a few months ago.
Yeah, Austin brings up a good point. You're losing 3 running backs this year.
Could lose.
Not many. Yeah, not many in that running back room after this year. So I can see 3. That's a really good point. All right, wide receivers here. We already have Javion Boggs already as a verbal commit to Ohio State here. And last time that we talked here, and honestly, I think it's the same. I think it's the same here. You also add in Jamie Finch as well.
French.
It's 2 F's. FF. It's not.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure it's still just spelled French. I pronounced French. Like,
okay. And Simmons Jr. Okay. All right. Thanks for correcting me. And Simmons Jr. as well. Those are the 3 that I have for
interesting.
Ohio State.
Yeah, I have Boggs. I have French. I, however, have Vernell Brown as my third guy. I'm going with a trio of Florida kids at the wide receiver spot. I do have Quentin Simmons in my short list. I have actually quite a few wide receivers in the short list. I think for me right now, Boggs is already committed, but he's also a Florida skill-based player. So committed is always a relative term, of course. I really like Jamie French. I think he'll be in the class at the end of the day. And I have a few guys. And by the way, it could also be 4. I have a 3-person mock for the wide receivers right now. It could be 4. It could be Brown and Simmons, but also like Edward Coleman, Khalil Lockett, Phillip Bell, Quincy Porter, DeCorian Moore, I think are all people to keep an eye on. None of these people would shock me if they ended up in this class. I'm not saying that any of them in particular are super likely. I think Quentin Simmons, as Kyle points out, if you were to add a 4th, or if you were to replace Vernell Brown, I think that is the person I would pick. So I don't even disagree with Kyle. I think Quentin Simmons, Vernell Brown, like eventually I decided I wanted 3 in the mock. Those are the 3 I went with, but like, I wouldn't be shocked if it was Simmons instead of Brown. I think it's a fair toss up at this point, quite frankly.
Before the show, Austin asked me, and he's asking you now, Jared, 4.5 Florida kids in this class. 4.5 kids.
Over under 4.5. I will say in this mock right now, I have 6 in my mock today.
That's double than what I have. So,
and I have an additional 3 players in the short list from Florida. So this could be a Florida heavy class.
That would be a heck of a grab if they do get 6 kids from Florida.
They're in real good with the wide receivers, and that's where I have a lot of. I mean, I literally just gave you 3 wide receivers, 3 wide receivers, all from Florida. Yeah. SFE, exactly. South Florida Express, for anyone who doesn't know. It's a 7-on-7 scholarship factory, quite frankly.
All right. And
tight ends.
Is the next one here.
I think this is another situation where I have 3 kids for 2 spots. Sorry, you go ahead though.
I was going to say I have the same people that we had last time that we talked, Nate Roberts and Luca Gilbert. Get 1 out of state, 1 in state, and there's your tight ends for the class.
Yeah. Nate Roberts is from Oklahoma. I feel like that's a matter of time pick, in my opinion. And then Luca Gilbert, incredibly talented in-state player. I think, as I was saying before, though, this is very much a 3 kids for 2 spots situation, and potentially a situation where I wouldn't be shocked. Again, obviously it's going to lose a ton of talent off of the team that they have right now. They just have a lot of players whose eligibility is up. A lot of players will be using their 4th year this year. So this could be a bigger than expected, bigger than average recruiting class. So it could be 3 tight ends. It could be 4 wide receivers. It could be 3 running backs. It just sort of depends. Brock Schott is who I'm referring to. Brock Schott is from Indiana. Indiana has a surprisingly strong class this year. If it were Brock Schott instead of Luca Gilbert, I wouldn't be shocked. Like that's totally plausible. Again, I wouldn't even say it's impossible that it's Roberts, Gilbert, and Schott. It very well could be. But for right now, I'm going Nate Roberts and Luca Gilbert. I'm also keeping Landon Pace on the short list. But I think at this point, it's the 3 guys. I think it's Roberts, Gilbert, and Schott. All
right. Offensive line. Big year in my opinion, this year with getting some really good talent on the offensive line here.
Next year, 2026 is. The 2026 class is so packed with offensive line talent within the state of Ohio. Yes, but also regionally. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but like there's very good offensive linemen in and generally around, like West Virginia has a great offensive tackle. Point being, I wouldn't be surprised if this offensive line class was a tad bit on the smaller side in order to make room, in order to keep room for the 2026 class. You could very easily see that as a 6-person offensive line class for Ohio State in 2026. As a result, I think this could be a 4, if not 3-person offensive line class this year. I am going to put 4 in the mock. This class... I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think they get 4th. You already have Carter Lowe already committed to Ohio State,
and he's the big fish.
He's the big fish. Yes, but I also think you need to have maybe not a big fish as well, but you need to have someone who's that next tier who can really contribute well. Also have Davenport in here and McFadden as well as an interior lineman, but need to get your 4th person needs to be a tackle. I know there's Sanders out there. There's
DeBoss.
Michael DeBoss out there as well. Micah DeBoss and Michael Fasusi as well. I think are 3 names to keep an eye out for. If you can get one of those guys, I really, really like this offensive line. Just need to get a second really good tackle in this class.
In my mock, I have Carter Lowe, who, as Kyle points out, is already in the recruiting class. Nolan Davenport, another Carter Lowe, absolutely a tackle. Davenport, in all likelihood, a tackle. He's again from Ohio. Interior, you have Raphael Green from Ohio. And then in my opinion, if they do get a 4th guy, which they probably will, but if they get a 4th guy, they will almost certainly go out of state to do it. Kyle mentioned Javian McFadden from Maryland. There are guys like Micah DeBoss out of Alabama. I'm, hope for the best there, but I'm not. I don't think that's super likely. Avery Gack from Michigan. I think if Michigan completely falls on their face this year, which I do think Michigan will fall on their face this year, I think it's a possibility that Ohio State gets Avery Gack out of the state of Michigan. Douglas Utu is a guy who I think I've had in past mocks for Ohio State. He's a tackle out of Las Vegas or Nevada, at least. He's Nevada, at least. I forget where in Nevada. There's a lot of good names who they have solid relationships with. And of course I have Maddie Augustine in the mock out of Connecticut. But yeah, there's a lot of guys who could be that 4th spot. To me, what I think will happen, I think, they have Carter Lowe in the class. They'll add Nolan Davenport. They'll add Raphael Green. And then it's just like, can you get like an absolute stud difference maker in that 4th spot? If you can't, I don't feel the need to fill it. I don't feel the need to fill that 4th spot. I think if you can get Maddie Augustine, if you can get Avery Gack, if you can get Micah DeBoss, then you go get that guy. I don't think they will or should add a 4th person. Just add a 4th person because again, Ohio State's already lined up for an historic 2026 recruiting class. Austin says in the chat, this class is tricky though, because the 2026 class sets up to be one of those best offensive line classes in Ohio State history. Yeah, it really is. It really does. And it really is. So we'll see how it plays out, obviously, but don't get freaked out. Don't get all caught up in your feelings if Ohio State only adds 3 offensive linemen this cycle, because I think 3 is more likely than 5, in my opinion, at this point. I think 4 is still probably most likely, but 3 is way more likely than 5. And that's by design. All right, Kyle, before we... Oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I agree. I definitely 3 more than 5, but I think 4 is the magic number. You can get that. You can get.
I agree.
Player. Yeah, if you can get that 4th player, that'd be really nice. Sanders and Fasusi are on that wish list.
Sanders isn't going to happen.
Neither it's Fasusi, but
no, I don't have either of those guys even on the short list at this point.
If you can get Micah in there in that list, yeah, I would feel really, really comfortable with the offensive line moving forward. But before we go into the defensive side, we're going to take a quick ad break here. If you don't want to hear these ads, become a patron over at discord.thesloopcast.com.
Patreon.thesloopcast.com.
And at patreon.thesloopcast.com.
And join the Discord server at discord.thesloopcast.com. All right, we're going to start that ad break now. All right, we're back from the ad break and or awkward silence. One of those two things just happened to you, depending upon where you are watching or listening to this. Right. Let's switch
defensive side here, Jared,
to the defense.
Defense. There is a defense. Yes. I struggle with the defensive line here, just trying to figure out where we see this defensive line come January or December, and December of this year, January next year, where this defensive line is going to look. It's just,
yeah.
I mean, we already have Zahir Mathis already verbal commit.
Yep.
On the defensive end side here, I think this is going to be a two player class here on the defensive end. I think you look no further than in-state Justin Hill to fill in that second spot here. But I know there's a lot of push, a lot of talk about London Merritt as a possibility in there too.
Yeah.
But I have
there's another Florida kid for you, Austin.
Hill.
So I'll say this. What we don't know right now is exactly what Ohio State's defense is looking for in regards to defensive linemen. There's been a lot of talk about bare fronts and 3-4s and 5-2s and 3-3s. And we're not 100% sure at this point what Ohio State's looking at. So I'll say this. Who is a defensive end and who is a defensive tackle, and quite frankly, who is a linebacker, is starting to get a little muddy. So when you say you only have 2 defensive ends, I think it might depend upon who we're counting as a defensive end. In my mock, I have Zahir Mathis already committed, already in the class. I have Justin Hill, who is currently being recruited by James Laurinaitis in the linebacking staff, although I do believe he ends up at defensive end. I have London Merritt, a kid from Georgia, currently going to IMG. And I have Marion Dye, another great player out of the state of Indiana this year. Again, Indiana, surprisingly talent rich this high school season. Now, someone might be looking at that and sorry, what'd you say, Kyle?
I say compared to previous years. Yeah.
By Indiana standards is the unspoken part there. I mean, I have an additional Damian Shanklin in the short list from Indiana as well, who could very easily end up in this class.
Well, Damian is looking really, really good towards Notre Dame right now.
Yeah, he is.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Which is why he's not in the mock.
Come to Ohio State.
but this is more of a me saying that Indiana is in fact very talented this year as a recruiting state. But yeah, I agree. Shanklin, unless things change, does look to be a Notre Dame kid at the moment, which is why he's on the short list and not in the mock. But yeah, someone might look at Marion Dye as a 3-tech defensive tackle and not a defensive end. It just kind of, it's all getting a little fuzzy as far as who is where right now. But for right now, for the sake of this mock, I have 4 defensive ends: Mathis, Hill, Merritt, and Dye. In the short list, I have from Maryland, Darian Smith, Maxwell Roy, who is from Pennsylvania, and another Maryland prospect in Trent Wilson. Excuse me. Those are those.
I was say that I think you got those backwards. Those are.
I have those. I have those backwards. Yes, those are defensive. This is why I kept hesitating. I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't right. I have my defensive ends and my defensive tackles and my defensive tackles and my defensive ends. Let me just correct the graphic real quick. At defensive end on the short list, I have Damian Shanklin, Javon Hilson. Javon Hilson is another Florida prospect, and Cedric Works from the state of Ohio. Okay, let's talk about the defensive tackles actually in the mock, since we've already talked about the defensive tackles in the short list.
Yeah. I mean, you look no further than in-state Brandon Caesar. I think we mentioned him last time we talked about it. Another name I have in here is Landon Rink. I've got Landon Rink in here as well. Mm-hmm. But I think on the outside here that I'd be really wishful thinking here, as you already have. I think here is Trent Wilson. I think getting Trent Wilson would be a big get here. But I have Caesar and Rink right now as my 2 defensive linemen.
I don't even have Rink in my short list. Am I wrong? Do you know something I don't know? Am I wrong?
As we like to say every year, Jared, it is early in the recruiting season.
It is. It's early in the cycle still, obviously. No, it's just, I'm surprised you have someone in the mock who I don't even have in the short list. And I don't know, like, one of us is wrong, I guess is my point.
or we're both wrong.
Well, in this okay, we're both definitely wrong, but specifically in regards to Rink, one of us is very wrong, because I should at least, if you have him in the mock, I should at least have him in the short list.
Landon Rink's out of Cypress, Texas. Definitely a not highly rated currently right now, but a lot of buzz with him. That's some okay size. But yeah, I think there's a lot of potential with him. And
sure.
Hearing a lot of buzz around him. So I put Rink in our 3rd mock class here.
Okay. I already mentioned Darian Smith, Maxwell Roy, and Trent Wilson as my 3 defensive tackles on the short list. All right. Linebackers. I think Ohio State is in very good position right now with linebackers.
Yes.
Keeping this list to 3, which is what I decided to do, was fairly difficult. I will once again point out that Justin Hill is currently being recruited by the linebacking staff. If Ohio State is maybe moving into more of a 3-4 5-2-3-3, whatever stance than a dedicated edge rusher, which is what Justin Hill is. Does start to look more like a linebacker than a defensive end. But again, for the sake of this mock, I'm keeping him in with the defensive ends, and we'll look at 3 linebackers. Eli Lee, who's already committed. TJ Alford, that's another Florida kid for you, Austin. And Madden Faramo. Madden Faramo.
That'd be
who is from California.
Huge get. Yeah, that'd be a huge get. Not just from California, though. Not just from California.
Yeah, I know. I did the thing.
Could he be the guy that finally breaks the curse for Ohio State and actually get a kid out of that high school?
From Martyr Day?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Listen. The kids from Martyr Day, they always put the football down, and they always swear they aren't going to pull it out the last second before I kick it. And they always pull out the football the last second before I kick it. Have I learned my lesson? No, I haven't. And if nothing else, we do have a mole on the inside for Mater Day right now. As Austin points out in the chat, Chris Henry Jr. feels like he shouldn't count, but will technically break the curse. But he could just not break the curse, but also be a bit of a spy on the inside and maybe help break that curse a year early. Yeah. It should be pointed out that this is not the only Mater Day prospect we have talked about today. Jordan Davis, the running back from California, also Mater Day. I don't have him in the list. I don't have him in the mock. I've never had him in the mock. I've always leaned more towards Byron Lewis as the national prospect. Most of my mocks to this point has had one Ohio prospect and one national prospect, and this time I changed it up and did 2 Ohio prospects. But that second prospect for me has always been Byron Lewis, because I just don't trust the Mater Day kids at the moment. They have just not landed here ever, despite being so close so many times. And then I turn around and I put Madden Faramo. I turn around and put Madden Faramo in the class, once again hoping that the football doesn't get pulled away from me at the last second.
Yeah. I have Lee and Faramo in my mock here. I'll go.
Do you also have TJ Alford?
You already pointed a lot in there, so I just have those 2.
So just a 2-person linebacking class for you?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I just got 2 here.
Interesting. In the short list, linebacking short list. I mean, I think 2 would be weird because, quite frankly, it's difficult for me not to put Elijah Melendez, excuse me, forgot the L. Elijah Melendez in the mock. I think he is an absolute possibility for Ohio State. Dante McClellan's an in-state prospect. Elijah Barnes from Texas. Nasir Wyatt from California. I think are all like relatively good prospects for Ohio State at this point. If someone is in the short list, that is me saying I wouldn't be shocked if they ended up in the class. That is what the short list is for me. I'm not saying, and that might be a 10% chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's also guys in the short list is pretty. It might be a long shot, but keep an eye on, which is like a 10% chance. But in some cases, it's like I had to flip a coin between, pick two guys who are really close. We were talking about the wide receivers between Quentin Simmons and Vernell Brown, right? Yeah. But at the very least, if someone's in the short list, that means I wouldn't be shocked.
All right, fair enough. Corners, I don't think we need to really discuss corners. I think it's the three here. It's Woodby, Sanchez, and Offord, three who are already committed there.
I will just say,
as long as there's no movement or any potential recommits, I think that's your cornerback class right there. Don't need to add any more.
I will say, just keep an eye on Offord. That's all I'm going to say. Like, maybe it's because he's from Alabama. Actually, a lot of it is because he's from Alabama. I think if Alabama comes out and has a really good year this year, I also think LSU's in play. I think there are other schools still in play here. I know Offord is in the class. He's committed. Just keep an eye on. I'll also say this. And by the way, I have no cornerbacks on the short list. I have these three. But there's a strong but here. Again, like we're talking about with like 3-tech defensive tackles versus, strong side defensive ends or edge defensive ends versus edge linebackers, it's getting a little blurry between the positions. Yeah, as Austin says in the chat, depends on if you list the corners as safeties. Yeah, because if we take a look at the safeties I have in this class, I have at least two guys who many would consider cornerbacks. And it's honestly getting to the point where I'm wondering, should I even be differentiating between corners and safeties at this point? Because I'm not sure I should be. Because that's just kind of how Ohio State is recruiting now.
Yeah, those are the three that I have in mind as well. McNutt, Delane, and Brew.
Yeah.
I have those three as in my class here.
Weirdly, so let's say Offord decommits, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I have no one in the short list. So who do we replace him with? In my mind, probably Dorian Brew. At that point, you just sort of say, well, Dorian Brew's is a corner. And then you go and you get a new safety from potentially the short list on safeties. We have Cody Haddad, who's an incredibly talented in-state prospect. I believe he's currently committed to Wisconsin. That doesn't mean a lot to me, quite frankly. If the mothership calls, the mothership calls. They also have Messiah Delome out of Virginia. Ohio State is in really good with 5 safeties right now. Again, sometimes if someone's on the short list, that just means I wouldn't be shocked. I would be more than not shocked if Ohio State adds, I was going to say a 4th safety, but let's a 7th defensive back. Because again, Brew or McNutt might be corners. We don't know at this point. So is it a 4th safety? Is it just a 7th defensive back? Think of it however you want to think of it. Whatever. But I think Ohio State is one. They had an excellent crew of corners in the 2024 class. The guys who they already have locked down in the 2023 class are incredibly talented. I will say, as far as Dorian Brew's concerned, keep an eye on LSU. I think LSU's real players there. I think Trey McNutt for sure ends up a Buckeye. I think Delane I don't want to say for sure, but more likely than not ends up a Buckeye. And it's really hard for me to say that Cody Haddad isn't almost certainly a Buckeye. even though I don't have him in the mock, because that's just kind of, and even though he's committed to Wisconsin, but that's just kind of the vibe I get. Of all the people who I don't have in the mock, he's the one who I think is most likely to actually end up in the class is Cody Haddad.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily know how all of that shifts out. And again, it's getting very amoebic as far as positions on the defensive side of the ball right now. But I tell you what, Kyle, what is always set in stone is $3 a month or $32 a year to join the Patreon. Patreon.thesloopcast.com. You can avoid ad breaks. You can get early access to episodes. You can join a Discord server and listen live to episodes, which is a premium feature within the Discord server. However, most of the Discord server is free. And which is what Austin's doing. Hi, Austin. Which is a cool benefit, I think. You can also, by the way, if you don't want to use Patreon, we recently introduced the ability to upgrade within Discord. It does cost slightly more money in Discord because Discord takes a bigger percentage. I forget. I think it's $5 a month if you sign up directly through the Discord server. It is cheaper through Patreon. We'd rather you use Patreon. Because I think we might make a few extra cents, but we're definitely not making $2 more through the Discord. Discord takes a bigger chunk, therefore we charge more in Discord. Use the Patreon. Save some money, use the Patreon. And if you want to even save more than if $3 a month still sounds like it's too much to you, and you want to save even more, you can sign up for an entire year up front and save, I think it's like 12% by doing that. So you basically like pay for 11 months and get the 12th month free, essentially. And all that can be done at patreon.thesloopcast.com. Here is that ad break now. Okay, Kyle. We are back from the ad break. You look at you have your mock class and you look at my mock class. Where would you say, do you have like a definitive opinion? Like, where do you think I'm wrong? Like, if you could change, like, definitively, like, stand up, pound the table, fight for your opinion.
I think it's the offensive line side. I know we spent a good amount of time on the offensive line there. I think that's
by the way, we should spend. It's where Ohio State's recruiting has been the weakest over the past few years. We should spend time on the offensive line.
Yeah, I know we're disagreeing. And rightfully so. There's the 2026 class is loaded with a lot of talent on the offensive line side, but you got to get good players in every year on that offensive line. And we've seen if you don't have a good offensive line in one of your classes, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, a lot of these players the year before or the year after don't pan out as well. We're going to be Ohio State's going to be in a really tough place to try to find someone in the portal that can be plug and play. And Ohio State you don't find them that often. Ohio State has only had like one really good portal that's come in and did really well.
I think that might depend upon your opinion of Josh Simmons. I know you're talking, well, technically Bourne transferred from Michigan. So
yeah,
the eldest Bourne did transfer from Michigan. So I know you're talking about, and his name is escaping me, from the interior guy from Rutgers is who I assume you're talking about when you say one. Transferring in, and by the way, I think McCullough is going to be good this year. I do think, in my opinion, he ends up winning. Yes, Jonah. Jonah Jackson. I do think McCullough ends up winning the center job this year. That's just an opinion. I could be mistaken. But yeah, I get what you're saying. But again, if we look at, yes, Austin McLaughlin. Yeah. Yes. Yes. I didn't have his name in front of me. I missed. But yeah, the 2026 class, not only do you have in-state Will Conroy, Sam Greer, Maxwell Riley, Londre Beatty, and like that could be your recruiting class right there. That could be your recruiting class right there of those 4 in-state guys. And that's a hell of a recruiting class. But now consider that they also have an incredibly excellent relationship with Micah Smith, one of the best offensive tackles in the class from Florida. You have Deron Parks in West Virginia, just across the border. Jackson Cantwell in Missouri. You have Tyler Merrill just right across the border in Pennsylvania. You have Adam Guthrie, another offensive tackle from Ohio, who, depending upon where he is at developmentally, if he, takes a leap this year, could also be of Ohio State quality. Ohio State has incredible prospects along the offensive line in 2026. I don't feel the need to load up on the offensive line. Again, go get studs, go get stars, go get future starters. But I don't think they should be taking depth players, guys who they know are going to, or develop depth players or developmental players in the 2025 class, because they're just going to get forced out by the 2026 guys. They're just going to get passed over and forced out by the 2026 guys. So yeah, go get Carter Lowe for sure. Go get Nolan Davenport for sure. And if you can land, Raphael Green in the interior, go get him for sure. And then if you can add a stud from outside the state on top of that, for sure, go do that. But now is not the time to go get, again, a developmental player who's, outside the top 500 overall recruits in the country. It's not the season to do that.
Anything else, Jared? I think that about covers it right now. It's still really early in the recruiting class here. I think this would be a very, very solid class here if Ohio State was.
This would be an excellent class.
Yeah, it'll be obviously the next time that we talk about this. I'm gonna look at our schedule. I don't think we're going to be talking about this for a little while. Maybe about 2 months from now. I think we'll recap again with any changes and updates here. Maybe end of May, beginning of June. We'll get back to here, talk about this again here, and see who's moved off and see who's moved on from our list here.
Yeah, with spring football off and running.
And that's all that we're going to be talking about for the next month here. We're gonna get right back into spring camp here. A lot of news, a lot of great things that we're hearing in camp here. Actually, a lot of good information that came out today, Jared, from their first private scrimmage here. A lot of great things. If you haven't joined the Buckeye Huddle right now, I advise you to do that. A lot of great information that the gang in there is posting. But yeah, really excited stuff, and we will get everybody caught up here for the next few episodes here.
Yeah. Stay tuned to the Buckeye Sloopcast for sure. I'm very excited for the spring game, and I'm very excited to, I just, Ohio State has 2 question marks right now. We don't know who the starting quarterback is, and we're very concerned about the offensive line still. I think the left side of the offensive line is fine and good. And running back coach in a way. Yeah. Ohio State right now, as far as the running back coach search goes, and I'm not, so the 2 most important positions, yes, Spikes. But by the way, that's why we're concerned. Like we have just as many questions at the tight end position. We're just not as worried about it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I have just as many questions about who exactly the starting and the road, who's going to be, how many players and who are those players are going to be rotating in and out at wide receiver? That's also an interesting question. There's so much talent there that I wouldn't call it a concern. Tight end, I feel like there's a lot of good talent. I don't know how much, I don't know if there's like any world beaters there, but I'm not that worried about it. The offensive line and the quarterback are the things that will stop Ohio State from winning the national championship this year.
Yep.
We are hearing some good things out of camp about the offensive line. It looks like the left side of the line is pretty set, which isn't a shock. We have 2 people battling out for the center position, which we knew. We fully expected that. And we have 3 players, presumably 3 players, fighting it out for 2 spots on the right side of the offensive line. We'll see how that goes. We have essentially 3 offensive tackles, all wanting to be the right tackle. And one of them will probably get moved to guard. But then again, maybe the loser at center gets moved out to guard. Mm-hmm. Don't know. I mean, you could argue 5 for 3. I would say 4 for 3 if we just count the. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's different because Meyer isn't going to win the center job, right? But Chibola, Monty, Fryer. I said Myers. Fryer. Get your names right. Fuck. Yeah, I know. Meyer, Fryer, Meyer. Fryer's not going to play center. Chibola's not going to play center. You know what I mean? So there's 2 separate battles. You have Hinsman and McLaughlin fighting it out for center. The loser of that job could move out to right guard. That's entirely possible. But for right now, I'm really viewing it as Fryer, Montgomery, and Chibola fighting it out for right tackle and also right guard. Fryer and Montgomery especially could slot into guard pretty easily. Chibola, he probably could in a pinch, but probably isn't the best selection for guard. He is more of a straightforward tackle. So, you have, point is that there is open competition and there is depth. One of the big issues Ohio State had last year with the offensive line is that it had no depth. You had no one pushing anyone for time. If someone was struggling, you couldn't just pull them out and throw someone else in. There was no competition. It's just here are the 5 offensive linemen we have. Go. And that's not the case now. Yep. And when starting positions aren't just handed to people, they tend to get better. Iron sharpens iron and all that, right? So I think that's where we're at right now at the offensive line, even if it's not the best, which it's not. They're still in much better position as an offensive line group now than they were. I mean, I say a year from now. Simmons wasn't even on the team a year ago. Not a year from now, a year ago. Wasn't even on, but even if Simmons was on the team, even if we count, Ohio State's in better position along the offensive line right now than they were, at the start of fall camp last year. And that says a lot. It might not be to the level we want it to be, but it will be much better than it was last year, especially early in the season, in my opinion.
All right. I think that's it. I think we can go ahead and end it right there. As I mentioned, we'll cover this in about 2 months here. We'll check in for any updates here. But yeah, any last words, Jared?
TJ Alford, linebacker who we mentioned, is set to commit on March 30th. I think I forgot to mention March 30th.
Yes.
Yes. I like the good guys in that. I like the good guys.
We'll see. We'll see.
I'm sorry. Are you questioning my call of TJ? Didn't you have TJ Alford in your class?
I did not.
I firmly disagree with you.
All right. Well, I hope I'm wrong.
Okay. Well, Austin, what do you feel? He's a Florida kid. I'm gonna give you last call on this. TJ Alford to Ohio State. He says he's a Buckeye. There you go.
Right.
The Florida high school coach says that he's a Buckeye. So I don't know what else to tell you, Kyle. All right. That's it. That's the end of the show. We already talked about the Patreon. We already talked about the Discord server. If you'd like to buy some merchandise, Kyle, show everyone your lovely t-shirt from the Sloopcast store. It's styled like the old crew logo, but it says the Buckeye Sloopcast. Isn't that fun? So you can find that t-shirt. You can find a bunch of other Sloopcast merchandise at merch.thesloopcast.com. And you can also just find some stuff that is just generally celebrates Ohio, but isn't like podcast merch at 7071. That's 77. Let me try that again. That's 7071 .thesloopcast.com. So you can support us using either of those methods as well. All right. Kyle, do you have anything in Kyle's Corner?
A pair of national champions here. Jesse Mendez is a NCAA championship in the 141-pound wrestling. And did you know, Jared, Ohio State is not a basketball school, not a football school.
No.
But a pistol school. They are a pistol school.
Pistol and synchronized swimming.
Yes.
This is Ohio State.
Fourth consecutive national championship for the Ohio State pistol team.
We'll never understand how the military academies don't win this. And yes, and for anyone wondering, yes, they compete. The military academies do compete in these events. By the way, there's
Coast Guard Academy took third spot.
Guys, it's your whole deal. But there are flying competitions that the Air Force doesn't win. These are real facts. Like, I wouldn't expect the Navy to win rowing. Right? But how's Army or Navy, because let's not forget the Marines go to the Naval Academy. How did the Army and Navy not win pistol? How is that possible?
I don't know.
I need answers to these questions. All right, Kyle. Anything else in Kyle's Corner?
Nope. That's it. That is it.
All right. That's the end of the podcast. Tonight's ending music. If you're new here, we don't actually play the music on the podcast version of the show because YouTube rules. We do play the music on the audio only podcast feed. But if you also the Naval Academy did take second. Pistol Team Awards, number 1, Ohio State, number 2, Navy, number 3, Army West Point. A distant second. Yeah, holy shit. That's a real distant second. I assume the second column is the actual points. Ohio State scored a 58. Ohio State scored a 58 and Navy in second place scored a 37. Army in third scored a 35. Guys, just saying, you want to be in Ohio when the shit hits the fan. That's all I'm saying. Or maybe you don't, depending upon.
All right, we're moving on.
Moving on.
We're gonna end it. Right, end it.
Moving on. Tonight's ending music. Again, if you're watching the podcast version of this and you're like, where's the ending music? There is a link down in the show notes. You can click that and listen to the song. So tonight's ending music is Old 100. Name of this band is Old 100. They are from Columbus. So with all that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone to drink local beer, listen to local music, and of course, support local podcasters. Once again, this is Old 100.